Persistent tensions with Pakistan at the LOC on one hand and with China at the LAC on the other. Add to India's neighborhood headache, in fact, this increased bitterness between Nepal and New Delhi. Now, in this context, can India afford to antagonize another neighbor which has actually been a friendly neighbor, Bangladesh? Well, evidently not, and India is going to do everything in its power to ensure that the growing Chinese influence there is quelled to an extent. In fact, Foreign Secretary Mr. Shringla has been rushed to Bangladesh for a quick whirlwind tour. To give us context, to tell us how India is planning to counter China's growing influence, Nayanima Basu, who tracks diplomacy for ThePrint, is with me in this live episode of Government Matters. She'll be happy to answer your questions as well. So Nayanima, what is this sudden trip by the Foreign Secretary?
So it was really decided at the last moment, and it really came at a time when China had just announced about assistance of about $1 billion for the Teesta water river project. So although I would not really link both the issues together, but yes, Foreign Secretary's visit to Bangladesh came at the last moment, and this has been, I think, on the anvil, under the works for a very long time, but I think the rush is now to basically understand where things stand between both countries, and also because we are going to have a new High Commissioner there. There have been reports that the present High Commissioner, Ms. Riva Das, she's been not getting, to meet Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina there. So, I guess according to the Ministry of External Affairs also, it just released a statement saying that, he's gone there to basically boost the bilateral ties.
Right. So give us, tell us something about what has been happening. Why has India been worried about China and Bangladesh? And what have India and Bangladesh ties been like in the last few months?
So India-Bangladesh, they've always enjoyed cordial relationship, especially under the Modi government, with the settlement of the boundary settlement, which was going on for a very long time. However, Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister Modi, was able to get it finalized and signed, and everything happened seamlessly. There have been tensions starting in the last I would say a year or so since discussions on the Citizenship Amendment Act, the NRC and other issues came to light, and the fact that there have been these comments from the Home Minister that calling Bangladeshi immigrants, illegal immigrants, to sort of call them as termites and things like that. So all these things really, have not really gone down well with the Bangladesh government. However, having said that, Bangladesh has never been that aggressive like what we've seen of late Nepal has been doing. Bangladesh has always maintained cordial ties, and in the last couple of weeks we've seen India starting a new connectivity route through the Chittagong port. We've also given them, gifted Bangladesh 10 locomotives that Bangladesh had requested for. So all these things have been going on, but politically tensions, the subtle tensions are there.
So how big is the China factor? Because we know in Nepal it has become a big deal, particularly under the Oli dispensation. How big is the factor in Bangladesh?
So when it comes to Bangladesh or when it comes to Nepal, they've always stated that, we are this small country sandwiched between two big neighbors, so we have to do the balancing act. While on one hand, Nepal had refused to say that, their new map has got nothing to do with their links relationship with China. Same goes for Bangladesh. They also continue saying the same. But for Bangladesh, the issue right now is under the Hasina government. Bangladesh economy had been really, going towards an upward trajectory. As per Bangladeshi reports, media reports, it seems even this year, 2019-2020, despite the pandemic, they'll register a GDP growth of about 5.5%. So, driven by that, Prime Minister Hasina has been really, asking for assistance and, all this kind of help, and, to develop the infrastructure and other things, both from China as well as India. So the thing is, China always gets a preference over India, sometimes also because of the fact that the projects that China undertakes, they really deliver them on time and expedite them, whereas in India's case, sometimes projects really get delayed.
Right.
So for Bangladesh, that becomes an issue.
Right. Okay, so let's start taking a few viewer questions. Karan Goyal, how will China's participation in the long-standing Teesta River issue impact India?
So this dispute has been one of the most contentious issues in the bilateral ties, and that's not just under this government, but also we've seen in the previous UPA regime, Dr. Manmohan Singh was almost about to sign the Teesta Water Sharing Pact, and this is something which is also has been an election issue there, and also the fact that Bangladesh really faces a lot of trouble in terms of dry and arid lands in that region with the Teesta river flowing, that dries up between December to March period. So they've been wanting India to go for this water sharing pact, but the issue there had been with the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. She's been wanting to have more discussions and more understanding, and she's in 2011 we've seen that she refused to sign the deal when it was almost done. So when Prime Minister Modi came to power during his visit to Bangladesh in 2015, he said, like the boundary settlement, he will settle this matter also. But we've seen Prime Minister Modi has also not been able to push it or make any further progress in sort of signing the deal. And that's something that Prime Minister Hasina has been constantly requesting India to go for. But it seems that now probably it will be very difficult for this government to convince Mamata Banerjee to sign the deal, because water is after all a state subject.
Also, the West Bengal Assembly elections are due next year.
Yes, absolutely. So she would not agree.
In India.
So Bangladesh realizes all of that. They know all of this. So which is why I think is the reason why they've approached the Chinese, and the Chinese have promised, as per again Bangladeshi media reports, that with this $1 billion assistance, they'll be able to maintain the water levels even when there is, a drought period. So that's what it is.
Right. Pradyumna B. Ravi, is China's strategic and military cooperation coupled with its economic development programs under the BRI, which is the Belt and Road Initiative, with Bangladesh deteriorating Dhaka-New Delhi bilateral relations?
Okay, so that's many issues in one question.
In one question, yes.
So, we've seen how this government had been pushing for neighborhood first policy. We've also seen our present External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar, when he was the Foreign Secretary, he had undertaken what was called at that time the SAARC Yatra and all of that. So for Bangladesh, it has always, wanted India to do things that it has promised. That goes even for things like SAARC, for example. Bangladesh had been asking India to set aside the tensions that India-Pakistan they have, and to move ahead in this regional framework called SAARC, and then there is BIMSTEC, in which Bangladesh is also a member, and then there is also a humongous connectivity project called the BBIN, which is the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal. So all these things have not been really moving to the way Bangladesh had expected. But for them, let's remember, it's very important to maintain the GDP growth, to maintain the economic growth that they are witnessing right now. And for that, they've been reaching out to India, but India's response has not been that much up to their expectations. And we know the process of SAARC is stalled in a way. BIMSTEC is moving at a very slow pace. So all this really
multiple factors
becomes little, I think, frustrating for the Hasina government.
Right. So let me just there are two similar questions. I'll just club them. One is from Malay Shah. Didn't India spoil its international relations with Bangladesh because of CAA? And Samir Rao, the CAA and NRC spoiling our relationship with our neighbors. So, surely, of course, there is this China factor, but the Modi government has pushed away a friendly country to an extent by harping on the citizenship issue of who they term as Bangladeshi infiltrators, and making it a very, very bitter political issue, sometimes even perhaps toxic.
Yes, and also the fact that, as if you remember, we had also discussed this earlier, Ruhi, in another episode of Government Matters, how the CAA, the way it was discussed, even the NRC, as if the aim was to throw all these so-called
send them
foreigners
back.
across, the border towards
Well,
Bangladesh.
the Home Minister Amit Shah also said, throw them into the Bay of Bengal. He said it in so many words.
Exactly. And so we've seen, and that had upset really the former High Commissioner of Bangladesh to India, and he said that Bangladeshis would prefer to, die but then come to India kind of a thing. So that time tensions were really at its peak. Which is why that led the Modi government to also convince Bangladesh that no matter what it does with the CAA and NRC, there will never be, all these people who will be deemed as foreigners will not be sent to Bangladesh. And also, there is this other factor of the Rohingya Muslims, of which there's been tensions going on between India, Bangladesh, and also Myanmar, because Bangladesh has said that they've taken the number of Rohingya refugees that they could, and they are in that point beyond which they can't take more. So they had requested India to, if they can take some more, but India has its own issues with the Rohingyas, as you are aware, and so Bangladesh had been wanting India to take that leadership role within the region to settle some of these, tension points. And I think that is where somewhere down the line, India has not been able to take that role of this, big brother in the South Asian region, which it has always been doing. So all these issues, they continue to remain where they are, and now Bangladesh really wants to get over with all these issues that continue to, fester.
Right. Aditya, what is the status of the diplomatic relationship with Nepal? So I'm glad the question has come in because, we've talked about Nepal in the past in government matters, but there has been some movement, some positive movement of late.
Yeah, so both prime ministers finally spoke after a gap of almost 2-3 months. They last spoke on the COVID issue in April. But after that, we've seen how Nepal had unilaterally changed its political map because they were upset with the way, with Defense Minister opening a new route to the Kailash Mansarovar that passes through Lipu Lake, which Nepal considers their territory.
Right.
However, it seems that some kind of baby steps have been taken, although border issues were not discussed. But I think that dialogue has started. And now I think with the Foreign Secretary's visit with Bangladesh, maybe we'll see some kind of positivity happening from there as well. But then I think we need to also understand the kind of Chinese influence that is growing in Bangladesh in terms of the projects they are doing, in terms of the trade that they are doing, because starting last month, China has started to import about 97% goods, which ranges around 8,000 to 9,000 from Bangladesh for zero duty. So all these things matter a lot for a small country like Bangladesh.
Right. There is a question from Tarush. Nepal, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh have all become close to China. Is Bhutan next?
Well, I would not really say things are as black and white like that in international relations. That's not how things work. But see, these are, as I said, these are smaller countries. They have these two big neighbors. They have no other way to go, especially even for Bhutan. So they have to do this balancing act, and they have to take the best from both. Right, so basically that becomes a sort of a competitive game between India and China. India continues to say that we are not competing with China and all that, but when it comes to the real outcome, India needs to really get its act together and implement the projects that it announces, the bilateral projects with the government's assistance in a really time-bound manner.
Right. There's a question from Sunil. What is the Indian government doing to prevent immigration from Bangladesh? So really that has become a thorny issue. Any more talk on that?
Well, right now borders are anyway shut. So, and we've just done this report in ThePrint that India is now looking to do a kind of an air bubble travel arrangement with Bangladesh. Today, even the Civil Aviation Minister announced that. However, when it comes to migration and things like that, let's remember that India and Bangladesh, they really have been enjoying this kind of open borders. There are checks and balances, of course, but there's been good and seamless movement of people. Now, people who come illegally, that happens across, everywhere in the world when you have such porous borders.
And it's also with Nepal that India has a porous
Absolutely.
border.
So, but then you have the right kind of law and order for that in place, and that's something that has probably come to light in the light of the CAA and other controversies. But I mean, India has been talking about it. Bangladesh refuses to acknowledge that there's been any illegal immigration. But then there's been historical issues. I mean, these were all, would say in British India was same country. So, but then, yeah, I mean, right now, anyway, for the pandemic, the borders are shut down.
Right.
So let's see how things
And a lot
happen.
of rhetoric on the entire immigrant issue has died down because the focus is on
Exactly.
battling the pandemic.
Exactly.
There's a question from Saikiran Shetty. Is Bangladesh warming up to Pakistan in the current circumstances?
Well, it's the other way around. It is Pakistan that is warming up to Bangladesh. And that, again, according to certain analysts and others, that is also happening at the behest of China, because China really wants this region to be cohesive for their own purposes. So we've seen how Pakistan's envoy in Bangladesh have been reaching out, and they've been discussing, they've discussed some of the issues. But let's remember that this is the same Sheikh Hasina government that really wants to now, they've already executed Mujibur Rahman's, their father of the nation, the killers of Mujibur Rahman. So that has a very, kind of a, I would say, ugly side to the Pakistan-Bangladesh relationship. That's the history that all of us know. So it won't be easy for Pakistan to suddenly, become friends. They've been talking, and this time we've seen that dialogue maybe has gained some kind of momentum, but it's really a long way to go.
Right. So now, before we close, Nayanima, very quickly, let's shift focus a little bit to Sri Lanka, with the Rajapakses now firmly establishing their hold over the country. What kind of change in India, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka dynamics do you foresee?
Well, Sri Lanka has been very interesting, because with Sri Lanka, the worry has been, again, it's been majorly China focused, because we've seen the experience with the Hambantota port, where Sri Lanka had to hand over an entire strategic port to the Chinese because they could not pay off the debt. But now, and this been happening because the Rajapaksa brothers, especially the present Prime Minister, who was at that time the President Mahindra Rajapaksa. So Mahindra Rajapaksa has been very much pro-Chinese, but right now, after the Easter bombings, things have really changed a lot, even in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is now being eyed by all your, US, Japan, Australia, because of the Indo-Pacific construct, which is why they have become this key nation. So again, for the Rajapaksa brothers, now it will be a humongous balancing game with India. And India has really ratcheted up its, kind of bonhomie relationship it has. We've seen the moment Prime Minister Rajapaksa's numbers were announced of his victory earlier this month, we've had our High Commissioner there, immediately calling him up and meeting him. Even Prime Minister Modi was the first leader in the world to congratulate Mahindra Rajapaksa for his win. So, of course, that remains a prime focus for India.
Right. Well, thank you, Nayanima, for explaining the dynamics of the neighborhood, particularly Bangladesh, which is now the focus. And we'll only get to know what the outcome of Mr. Shringla's visit is in a little while. But do keep track of the print. We'll keep giving you updates on that. Thank you for watching Government Matters, for sending in your questions. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page.